So, hi everyone. Before I begin my talk, I just want to ask a question here. How many of you drink tea? Okay, I'm so glad to hear that because my topic is sustainability. So, I love tea so much. I have this issue where I have like way too much tea at home, so I try to get rid of it. I pass it to my friends. I'll just bring it to their houses. You can leave it there. And then my tea cupboard is too full again because once there's space, it's a reason to buy more tea. But about a year or two ago, I started noticing some pretty disturbing issues within the tea industry. And these are things that can be categorized into three types of problem: planet, people, and profit. On the planet side, tea is being harmed by climate change and is in turn harming the environment. A report by Charity Aid says that up to 25% of the optimal tea growing areas in Kenya and up to 39% of the medium optimal tea growing areas can be destroyed by 2050. Another report from Ling says that climate change is encouraging insect proliferation, which damages the crops, and is also shortening the 8 months harvest cycle to 6 months. On the flip side, conventional tea is often grown with insecticides and artificial fertilizers, which have a pretty damaging effect on the whole food chain. If we think of a book that I read recently on one of the first tea farms in Darjeeling to go organic and biodynamic, the reason why they stopped using insecticides is that they saw a pheasant which died of insecticide poisoning, was in turn killed by a cat that fed on it, which in turn killed a panther. So insecticides don't just harm the animals eating the plants, they go way beyond that. On the people side, there are plenty of issues within labor, there's gender gaps and so forth, but for me, one of the biggest issues is the seasonality of wages. A lot of people working on the tea farms are paid according to how much tea they pluck or what work they do. But the work needed isn't constant all year round. So their income fluctuates through the year, which means they have unsteady income, and in certain countries like Indonesia, their average income can fall below the minimum wage. Finally, there's a profit or business issue with tea. If we think back to 2-3 centuries ago when tea came to Europe, it was a drink for the very, very rich. Most of us here probably couldn't afford it. I wouldn't have more than like a leaf, maybe. But now we can have so much. We can go to any supermarket, buy a box of tea for maybe 3 or 4 euros, which means the real price of tea has gone down. And there's so much price pressure on farmers to keep selling it as a commodity, bringing the prices lower and lower. And is it a surprise then that they are trying to cut costs in environmental and social aspects? Not really. And this way of looking at the tea industry through 3 areas is really part of something called the triple bottom line. This is when we look at a company not just by how much money it makes, but its impact on the environment and the people. And I think that's also something we can apply to us. When we are buying things, when food, tea, or whatever, do we just look at cost and maybe taste or benefits? Or do we also look at how things are made and its impact on the people making it? And when I found out all these issues, I could have done a few things. I could have just ignored it and continued drinking my tea. I could have bought less tea and say, oh, you know what, I'm reducing my impact. But I thought there had to be a better solution. So I've been talking to many amazing, amazing tea farms and brands, and I just want to share some of their stories with you. So we're going to go around the world. I will share with you 3 cups of tea as well. And we will see what we can do as consumers to change the industry. We'll start in Japan, because I lived there for about 5.5 years, and it's where I fell in love with tea. This is Yakushima Island, and this is the first organic tea farm on the island. Yakushima is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it's gorgeous. The picture on the right is something I took in one of the trails. It's a beginner trail, because I'm not an expert tea hiker and skier and all that, but it's very nice. There are very much more expert trails as well, and when you're hiking, I'm pretty sure you want to drink something. In Japan, tea is very popular. But if you've ever drunk tea in a bottle or made tea in a bottle, you notice there's an issue. If you don't have a filter, or if you're not using tea bags, my friends can tell you this, when you drink loose leaf tea like that, you're going to get tea leaves in your mouth. Not a pleasant experience. So a lot of people, they make tea in bottles using tea bags, and when they're done, they take the tea bags and throw it away. What they don't realize is that a lot of tea bags are made using plastic, so they don't biodegrade, and they turn out to pollute the environment instead. Now, this tea farm is so aware that they're in a very beautiful position in the world. They're full of nature, it's a heritage. So it informs not just how they grow the tea, which is with utmost respect, but also what products they make. When they realized how hikers were drinking their tea, they decided not to stop making tea bags because hikers do need them. They said, we'll make it with compostable materials. We'll design it so that it does not impact the environment in a negative way. And so tea can be informed by the environment, and it can also impact the environment as well. So before that, my first cup of tea to calm me down. This is genmaicha, which is a very popular tea in Japan. It's made by roasting sencha, or Japanese green tea with rice. And I find the starch from the rice gives it added sweetness and a very cozy flavor. The sencha gives it a toasted seaweed note, and it's just a cozy, warm drink. So it's really nice all year round. You can cold brew it. But my favorite way to drink this is in winter because a hot cup of genmaicha warms you up from the inside. Not what we need now, but it's great, later in the year. And tea can also help the environment. This is a picture from Nepal. In 2002, two brothers decided to start an organic tea farm. If we look at the picture on the right, it is definitely the beginnings of a farm, but you can see the soil. There's some white things that I don't think is actually natural or a plant. And we look at it almost 20 years later. So much greener, it looks healthier. And this is because the farm practices not just organic, but they're trying to move towards natural farming. Natural farming is a concept from Japan where we remove as much man-made interventions as possible, and we try to follow the rhythm of the land to make it regenerative, not just destructive. So next, let's look at the people side. And for that, I have another tea to share with you. This is a white tea, a white peony tea, which if you drink Chinese tea, you know it's by Bhutan, but clearly by the leaves, it's not from China. This is from Africa, and the tea is so cool because the first cup of tea you make, it's going to be very like a white tea. Very sweet, very light, very floral. But as you continue adding water, make your second and third cup of tea, the sweetness goes away, and a woody note comes up. And it really, really reminds me of a black tea, which is so apt because Africa produces 99% of the tea produced there is CTC black tea. That's the tea you find in your supermarkets in tea bags. But if you look at how gorgeous these leaves are, this is not supermarket tea. This is an artisanal tea made from a farm in Malawi, Africa. They practice, of course, green farming as well, but what I really love is their commitment to their community. They are trying to get rid of the problem of seasonal wages by hiring as many permanent employees as possible. They have 1,200 permanent employees, of which 29% are women. And they realize it's not enough to just give them a steady wage. There's an infrastructure issue, so they're stepping in. They provide free nurseries, primary school, healthcare. And they also work with their customers to give university scholarships to students in this community who want to further their studies. All this is possible not because they are not creating commodity tea. They're not selling for the lowest possible price, but they're selling at a fair price. It's not too expensive because I've bought it several times, and clearly if I can afford it, you can too. But it is enough to keep the company, the tea farm, and the whole community afloat. And that brings us really to our third part, right? Profit. And also my third cup of tea. When I came to France, I did not actually expect Europe to grow tea. I thought any tea I buy here will have been grown somewhere else, in one of the famous tea-producing countries of the world. And it will be just blended here. And then I realized Europe does have tea farms, not in France, but somewhere else. This is an oolong tea I got. It is really delicious. It's very sweet, especially in its aftertaste and its smell. There's a nutty note, and the flavor is wonderfully stable. So the first cup, the fourth cup taste the same, just slightly less intense. It's great for studying, because when you study, you want a nice cup, but you don't have to think too much about it. And this tea was grown in Georgia. And I just really loved researching about Georgian tea, let me tell you. The first tea plant came to Georgia over 2 centuries ago in 1817. But it took about 80 years, or about until 1893, before the first commercial tea farm opened. And then tea just sped up. By 1940, there were 37 tea farms and factories in Georgia, and tea was 18% of their agricultural output. But because they sold mainly to countries that belonged to the former Soviet Union, when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1990, the tea industry collapsed. And what that means is that many villagers whose local economy was dependent on tea also collapsed. They had no more jobs, they had to leave their homes just to find work. Now, this tea farm was started by a few friends from around the region in Europe, and they wanted to revitalize the Georgian tea industry. So now they're actually one of the biggest local employers. They give people in the village an opportunity to stay at home and find good employment without having to leave just to find work. They're also trialing a very, very cool method of selling tea, and that is to adopt a tea plant. So it's kind of like, what? You can adopt a tea plant for 1 year or 3 years, and you can even get a little sign with your name on it and visit the tea plant like a pet. And what that means is that you tell them how much tea you want a year and what kind of tea you want. Apart from bringing you closer to the tea that you're going to drink, it's got benefits for the farm. Firstly, they can stop guessing so much with how much tea to make. They make green tea, oolong tea, black tea, and they make several types of each tea. Every year, it's a guessing game. How much green tea do I make this year? Will the demand for black tea increase? Or how about oolong? They don't know. Now, the guesswork is taken out. They can say, okay, I know I have at least this much demand of this green tea, of this black tea, and there's less wastage because they're making the tea they know will sell. There's also less wastage in terms of environmental costs because they noticed many of our customers love our tea. They buy it every few months. Now we'll send it to them once a year and we'll cut down on all this transportation impact on the environment. They also cut down on packaging waste because their teas are no longer in smaller packets, they're in bigger packets, and that's another good thing for the environment. Now we've been to about 4 countries and we've seen one thing, which is that the triple bottom line doesn't work in isolation. You don't have a farm that's doing really great environmentally but somehow suffering really badly on the other two. It's not sustainable in the long term. And it's a very holistic way of looking at things. And I hope another thing that you've realized is that I've realized this by talking to so many farms, is that something like a sustainability mindset is developing in you. Because a sustainability mindset is firstly recognizing our impact and our relationship to tea. We're looking at the whole system, how this cup of tea in my hands is actually connected to the people who grow the tea and the earth that gives life to it. And also, apart from knowing what we are doing, we have this new sense of compassion, of empathy, and most importantly, the ability to make new and better choices, which I think admittedly sounds very theoretical. In like the 10 minutes I've been here, I've told you things are terrible, and then wait, things can be good, and what does that mean? So we'll go back to Japan, and I'll tell you very concretely what all this means for all of us. This is a group of farmers in Saitama Prefecture, which is near Tokyo. The fact that I say group means that there's more than one. They are a community. And isn't that the role of tea? We often have tea with friends, with family, over happy and sad incidents. And we should continue to do this. Tea is very social. And don't just share with your friends and family about what you're learning, but also connect to the people growing your tea. Many of them are online now. Find out how your tea is being grown and who is growing them. That's step 1. Step 2, and what they show us, is that small steps have big impact. Not all these farmers were organic when they started working together, and not all of them are organic today. But together, by sharing their knowledge and resources, they've reduced their artificial fertilizer and insecticide use to less than 1/20th of what the average tea farm in Japan does. That's amazing. And that's the same for us. There's no need to go home and throw out any tea that doesn't have a fair trade label or that you're not sure if it's good. You can continue drinking it. But as you connect to others in the tea industry and build this community, maybe the next tea you buy will be a really cool, delicious tea from a farm that you've just discovered that is doing the right thing for the planet and people. Or maybe you'll be talking to a friend who wants to buy tea as a gift or for themselves, and you say, actually, I know just the place. And they do great things all across. Finally, the farmers are working against the commodification of tea by participating in a single origin tea project. What this means is that they create sencha, Japanese tea, 1 cultivar per farm. And it's amazing because when I started drinking these teas, I thought, I know sencha, I've lived in Japan for 5 years. It's all the same. I was wrong. There is sencha with floral notes, some that's so intense in its umami, and some with a very deep vegetal note. Just one type of tea alone has so much diversity in its taste, which really goes to show that tea itself is an adventure. It is fun to explore all these cool farms. It is not a hindrance or an obligation we must do to be better. It is an adventure and a journey that I enjoy personally. And that's really what I hope to encourage you with. Let's stop making the same choices where we keep buying the same tea. It's cheap economically, but so costly in its environmental and social costs. We should put our money where our mouths are and buy better tea for us and for the planet and for the people making the tea. Thank you.